Everyone blamed Harley. Too noisy, too outdated, too expensive. But while the critics talked, Indian crumbled. Harley isn't just surviving, it's dominating. Better resale, deeper culture, stronger dealerships. So why are Indian bikes disappearing? And why does Harley, even with its flaws, still command the road? What's happening? Indian Motorcycle loves to remind the world that it was founded in the year 1901, 2 years before Harley-Davidson. You'll see it stamped on their fuel tanks, printed on their merchandise, and woven into nearly every piece of marketing material they put out. Since 1901. It sounds impressive. It feels powerful. It's a clever piece of branding that immediately suggests deep roots, unbroken legacy, and a kind of purity that no rival can touch. But once you peel back the label, the truth is anything but flattering. Because while Indian may have been founded 2 years earlier than Harley, that edge disappears the moment you look at what actually happened. Indian went dark. Not for a year, not for a decade, for nearly 50 years. In the year 1953, the original Indian Motorcycle Company completely collapsed. Financial mismanagement, outdated designs, and stiff post-war competition left the company gasping for air. That year, the last true Springfield-built Indian rolled off the line, and then the lights went out, permanently. From that moment on, everything that wore the Indian badge was little more than a zombie brand. Throughout the second half of the 20th century, Indian became a corporate football. Foreign investors tried to revive it. Licensing deals were signed with companies that had no real connection to motorcycles. At one point, imported bikes from Royal Enfield and Velocette were rebadged and sold under the Indian name. There was no engineering lineage, no design continuity, no American factory producing V-twin engines in the spirit of the brand. It was a patchwork of business failures, lawsuit settlements, and marketing Hail Marys. A brand in name only. Now let's talk about Harley-Davidson. Harley wasn't perfect during that time either. In fact, the 1970s and early 1980s were some of the toughest years in its history. The American machine and foundry era saw the company sold to a conglomerate more interested in production quotas than quality. Reliability suffered. The infamous buy one, get two free jokes were born. But, and this is critical, Harley never stopped building motorcycles. It never ceased production. It never handed its name off to another company to slap on whatever imports they could find. Through war, recession, and bad leadership, Harley kept producing bikes. Real bikes. With real engineering and real community support behind them. Now, credit where it's due, Polaris did what no one else could. They took the broken remains of Indian and rebuilt it into a functioning motorcycle company. They didn't just badge up existing bikes. They designed new engines, built new platforms, and reintroduced the brand with real investment. The Thunderstroke and Power Plus engines were developed from scratch. The bikes were competent, modern, and well-engineered. Polaris deserves praise for that. But here's the problem. Engineering and history are not the same thing. Polaris didn't revive Indian's heritage. They created something new and pasted a very old logo on top of it. That matters, because when you claim to be since 1901, you're not just selling a product, you're selling a myth. And that myth falls apart under scrutiny. So next time you hear someone brag that Indian is older than Harley, ask them this. Where was Indian in 1975? Where were the dealerships, the rallies, the community? The answer is nowhere. Because they weren't building bikes. They weren't even present. That legacy they love to flaunt? It's not heritage, it's theater. But if you think the fake history is bad, just wait until we dig into what happens when the bike breaks down. The dealer desert. Buying a motorcycle is easy. Maintaining one on the road? That's the hard part. And this is where Harley-Davidson absolutely destroys Indian. Let's say you're out for a weekend ride across rural Tennessee, clear skies, full tank, and suddenly your engine temperature spikes. Coolant starts leaking. You pull over to check. It's bad. The radiator's bleeding out. What do? If you're on a Harley-Davidson, chances are there's a dealership within 10 to 20 miles. You call ahead, they've got the part in stock, you limp the bike in, and you're back on the road before sundown. But if you're on an Indian, you're in trouble. Indian's dealership network is sparse, barely a quarter of what Harley operates nationwide. Many locations are tucked inside Polaris showrooms with limited staff and inventory. Some don't even keep common repair parts on site, which means your weekend ride just turned into a waiting game. You're calling tow trucks, sitting in the sun, watching your time and trust evaporate. And that's not a dramatic exaggeration. It's a common experience. Indian owners across the country report longer wait times for parts, fewer service bays, and a general lack of support outside major urban hubs. Harley-Davidson has spent over a century building a nationwide support system. That means real freedom. Freedom to ride far, ride fast, and ride with confidence. Indian, you better stay close to home, because if something goes wrong, your bike isn't going anywhere without a trailer. This isn't guesswork. It's research, wrench time, and real-world feedback. If you value that, consider subscribing now and hit the like button. Customization isn't for you. Harley-Davidson isn't just a brand, it's a platform. A Harley is not the end product, it's the beginning. From exhaust systems to suspension kits, ape hanger bars to cafe racer seats, every Harley is a blank canvas waiting to be personalized. There's a reason entire industries exist solely to make Harley parts. Vance and Hines, Arlen Ness, Saddlemen, Biltwell. Thousands of third-party options exist, and better yet, they're plug and play. You can build your dream bike in your garage, your backyard, or your local shop. And it's all supported by an ecosystem that encourages creativity, community, and individuality. Indian? Not even close. Most of the aftermarket options are proprietary. You buy what Polaris sells, or you don't buy at all. Want performance upgrades? You'll hit a wall by stage 3, and even then it's only for select engines. Riders of Scouts or FTRs? Forget it. No official upgrade path, no modular culture, no third-party explosion of parts, just a few bolt-ons and a whole lot of frustration. That's not a culture. That's a corporate cage. And for riders who want their bike to reflect who they are, Indian offers almost nothing in return. But if the culture gap wasn't already clear, just wait until you see how directionless Indian's lineup really is. A brand with no map. You walk into a dealership ready to buy your first Indian. You've done your research, or so you thought. But now, standing face to face with the lineup, something feels off. There are 4 different versions of the same motorcycle staring back at you. The Scout, the Scout Rogue, the Scout Bobber, and the Scout Bobber 20. All of them feature the same 1133 cubic centimeter V twin engine. All of them share the same chassis. And all of them, if you squint just a little, look almost exactly the same. You ask the sales guy, what's the difference? He pauses, stammers something about styling options and handlebars, and then goes quiet. That's when you realize you are staring at the same bike in 4 outfits and no one can tell you why it matters. This is Indian's biggest problem. The brand does not have a map. Instead of curating a lineup with clear segmentation and purpose, they have created a chaotic overlap of models that blur into one another. You think you're choosing between different bikes, but you're actually picking from the same dish served 4 times with different garnish. And it's not just the Scout lineup. Let's talk about Indian's top-tier models. The Challenger is supposed to be Indian's flagship, a fixed fairing bagger that competes with the best Harley-Davidson has to offer. But then you look under the hood and something strange happens. The Challenger runs a 1768 cubic centimeter engine, while other bikes lower in the pricing ladder, like the Chief and the Springfield, use the larger 1890 cubic centimeter Thunderstroke. Why is the smaller engine powering the top-tier model? No one can give a clear answer. It's like buying a Cadillac and finding out the compact SUV has more horsepower than the full-sized Escalade. The numbers just don't add up, and riders are noticing. Even worse, flagship models like the Challenger and the Chieftain feel visually confused. The Challenger's fairing looks like it was bought off eBay and bolted on by someone with a cordless drill and a deadline. It doesn't scream confidence. It whispers compromise. And in a world where cruisers and baggers are as much about presence as performance, that's a killer blow. Indian's lineup isn't just hard to understand, it actively pushes buyers away. There's no natural rider progression. No obvious place to start, no hero model that anchors the brand's identity. It's a menu of maybes, and in today's market, that's not enough. Because the only thing worse than buying the wrong bike is not knowing which bike to buy in the first place. And even when you do pick one, you better hope you don't care about how it actually rides. When performance meets a wall. Indian wants you to believe it's the performance brand. Just listen to their marketing. They talk torque, they talk power, they talk innovation. And on paper, it all sounds impressive. The Power Plus engine in the Challenger promises 128 pound-feet of torque. The FTR looks like a race machine built for the street. But the truth? It all hits a wall the moment the rubber meets the road. Start with the FTR. At first glance, it's a beast. Liquid-cooled V-twin. Flat-track inspired geometry. Aggressive stance. It should be a category killer, but it's not, because the FTR weighs over 530 pounds. That's sport touring territory, not naked sport bike. And it shows. Compared to true performance machines from Yamaha, Triumph, or Ducati, the FTR feels sluggish in corners, heavy on throttle, and awkward in tight maneuvers. It's not bad. It's just not the game changer Indian wants you to believe it is. Then there's the Power Plus engine. This is Indian's big bet. It looks good on spec sheets, but in independent dyno tests, it rarely hits its advertised numbers. Real-world torque often tops out around 115 to 120 pound-feet, right in line with Harley-Davidson's Milwaukee 8 engines. And here's the kicker. Harley hits those numbers earlier in the rev band. That means more low-end grunt, more usable pull, and more real-world satisfaction when you twist the throttle on a Harley. It's not just a marketing race, it's a rideability race, and Indian is losing it. Even their much-touted tech, like ride modes and lean-sensitive traction control, feels more like filler than function. This is not a super sport bike carving canyons at triple-digit speeds. It's a heavyweight cruiser, and in that context, most of the tech feels like overkill. Riders want raw torque, smooth delivery, and long-haul reliability. Not a track day gimmick buried in a cruiser chassis. What's more frustrating is that the potential is there. The engines sound good, the throttle is responsive, but Indian always stops just short of greatness. The bikes never quite go far enough. It's like someone pulled the plug halfway through development and said, good enough. And when things start breaking down, which they will, you'll find out just how good enough really feels. Service nightmares and support delays. Owning a motorcycle should be about freedom, not frustration. But for too many Indian riders, it's the latter. Because the moment something goes wrong, and it will, you're no longer just a rider, you're a hostage. Let's talk parts. Need a replacement for a busted switch, a cracked sensor, or a leaky coolant hose? You might be waiting weeks, maybe even months. Dealerships routinely report back-ordered parts, and riders share horror stories online about missed riding seasons, endless delays, and customer service loops that go nowhere. That's not even the worst part. Some riders report that even when their local Indian dealership confirms the part has arrived, it still takes days to get installed. Why? Because Indian's service network is paper thin. Many dealerships are shared spaces. Polaris showrooms that also sell snowmobiles, ATVs, and jet skis. That means service techs are often generalists, not motorcycle specialists. Your expensive bagger is sitting behind someone's broken lawn vehicle in the queue. That's not just annoying, it's disrespectful. Contrast that with Harley-Davidson. Say what you want about them, but their service game is bulletproof. If you walk into a Harley dealership, there's a good chance your issue will be diagnosed, quoted, and scheduled in under 20 minutes. And thanks to their massive parts network and consistent service training, most common problems are fixed same day. Harley doesn't just sell bikes, they sell confidence. Indian's warranty experience is another sore spot. On paper, it matches Harley, but in reality, it's often a mess. Claims take longer. Coverage feels inconsistent. Riders report being bounced between dealerships, Polaris corporate reps, and third-party service providers just to get a straight answer. It's exhausting. And at the core of the issue is this. Polaris still treats Indian like a side hustle. A premium brand needs premium support. Indian is still operating like an off-road company pretending to be a motorcycle icon. And riders, especially those who've experienced Harley's ecosystem, notice the difference. But what's even worse than a confusing brand? A disappearing one. Dealerships are already quiet. Walk into an Indian dealership in the year 2025, and one thing becomes instantly clear. It's quiet. Not just in sound, but in energy. The floors are polished, the lighting is fine, but the soul is gone. No crowd around the latest release, no group of riders swapping stories at the counter, no buzz, just empty space. Too many unsold bikes and sales reps who look like they're waiting for the end of shift, not the next customer. That's not just anecdotal, it's the new normal. More and more Indian dealerships are downsizing or disappearing entirely. Independent dealers who once stocked Indian motorcycles alongside their other brands are quietly walking away. Why? The margins are thin, the foot traffic is thinner, and compared to Harley-Davidson, there's no tribe. And that's the real difference. Harley-Davidson dealers don't just sell bikes, they build community. Weekends are for test rides, barbecues, and wrench nights. Showrooms double as hangouts. You'll see kids wearing Harley gear, riders talking gear ratios, and older mechanics passing down decades of knowledge. It feels alive. Even a new rider walking in senses that they're part of something bigger. You ride out on a Harley and you belong. Now try that with Indian. There's no Saturday event, no group rides leaving from the parking lot, no wall of Polaroids showing local riders and their builds. In some showrooms, even the apparel section is shrunk. Fewer shirts, fewer patches, fewer reasons to walk in if you're not actively buying. This isn't just a failure of sales, it's a failure of presence. When a motorcycle brand loses its visibility in the real world, it doesn't matter how good the bike is on paper. If there's no energy at the dealership, there's no momentum. And that means new riders won't show up and old riders won't return. And once the dealership goes quiet, the message is loud and clear. The community already left. But the silence doesn't just stop at the showroom door, it echoes in the used market where real value gets revealed. Used market confirms the truth. If you want to know what the world really thinks of a motorcycle, don't look at the showroom. Look at the used market, because in the real world where emotion meets practicality, resale value is the final judge. And Indian motorcycles are not holding up. Let's talk numbers. According to Kelley Blue Book and national resale platforms, a 3-year-old Indian Challenger drops in value at a faster rate than a Harley-Davidson Street Glide. How much faster? On average, $3,000 to $5,000 more in depreciation by the 36-month mark. That means if you buy a brand new Indian, you're watching money evaporate before the break-in period is even over. And it's not just the Challenger. The same pattern applies across the Scout, the Chieftain, and the FTR. Used prices sink faster. Trade-in offers are lower. Dealers are hesitant to stock Indian trade-ins without a deep discount built in because they know resale is weak, demand is shallow, and buyers want something else. That something else is still Harley-Davidson. Walk into any used dealership and compare the offers. A 3-year-old Harley Softail with moderate mileage often commands a higher asking price than a newer Indian Scout. Why? Because buyers trust the Harley name. They know it's serviceable anywhere. They know the aftermarket support is huge, and they know that if they ever want to sell it again, someone will show up. That's brand power. And Indian just doesn't have it. Even online, the data confirms it. Used listings for Indian bikes take longer to sell. They get fewer inquiries. And more often than not, the final selling price ends up below the asking price by a wide margin. Harley bikes, on the other hand, tend to hold firm, or even spark bidding when the model is rare or well kept. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the world sees through the marketing. It tells us that underdog branding and slick videos don't build long-term confidence. And it proves that riders, whether they admit it or not, still want the bike that keeps its value, earns respect, and delivers long after the warranty ends. And that lack of trust in the used market points to a deeper truth. Indian doesn't just lack resale, it lacks a home. But if you want to know why that identity never took root, you have to look at who's steering the ship. Polaris never wanted a motorcycle company. Behind the curtain, it all becomes clear. Indian isn't Harley-Davidson's rival. It's Polaris's side project. Let's be honest, Polaris is not a motorcycle company. It is a powersports conglomerate. It makes snowmobiles, side-by-sides, ATVs, and personal watercraft. And somewhere along the way, it picked up Indian as a brand asset. Not a mission, not a calling, an asset. That difference shows in every decision. Polaris never poured its soul into Indian. It poured capital. It built infrastructure. It launched new engines. But it never built a culture. It never cultivated a lifestyle. And the result is what you see now. A technically competent, mechanically impressive, emotionally hollow motorcycle brand that feels more like a corporate experiment than a cultural movement. Everything from the showroom tone to the marketing strategy to the after-sale support screams spreadsheet, not soul. Polaris talks in product cycles and quarterly returns. Harley, for all its flaws, still talks like a tribe. When you buy a Harley, you are buying into a lineage. You are joining a legacy. When you buy an Indian, you are buying a machine and hoping the company sticks with it. And that is the core of the issue. Riders can sense when a company is in it for the long haul. They know the difference between a lifestyle brand and a line item. And while Harley-Davidson has weathered recessions, scandals, and leadership changes, it has never abandoned its mission: build motorcycles, build riders, build legacy. Indian, it could be sold off tomorrow, and nothing in Polaris's behavior would suggest otherwise. And that brings us to the final question. What happens next? Because while Indian stalls in place, Harley is already heading toward the next frontier, the EV horizon. Say what you want about Harley's quirks, but here's something Indian riders hate to admit. Harley beat them to the future. Livewire was not just the first electric Harley-Davidson, it was the first major electric motorcycle from any legacy manufacturer that dared to bet big. It wasn't just a prototype or a showpiece, it went into production. It hit the road, and it proved that Harley was willing to think beyond the V-twin. Indian? They haven't even started the conversation. Livewire debuted under the Harley banner in the year 2019 and has since become its own sub-brand. It's sleek, fast, and more importantly, it signaled a shift. Harley wasn't going to wait for the world to change. It was going to lead the change. Sure, the price was steep. Sure, some purists rolled their eyes. But guess what? It still happened. Dealerships trained staff. Service teams learned new tools. Riders took test rides, and some even made the leap. The EV market is still young, but Harley has already planted its flag. Meanwhile, Indian is silent. Not one EV concept, not one publicized prototype, no statement of intent. Nothing. And silence is dangerous in an industry moving as fast as this. Harley is already on its second-generation electric motorcycle, while Indian hasn't even built a charging strategy. That's not a delay. It's a strategic embarrassment. And it's not just about bragging rights. Government incentives are shifting. Young riders are demanding cleaner tech. International markets are setting emission caps. If you're not playing in the EV space now, you're going to be locked out later. Indian doesn't just risk falling behind, they risk becoming irrelevant in a future they refuse to prepare for. And let's be clear, Harley's EV push isn't just about motorcycles. It's about reshaping the brand. Livewire riders are younger, more tech-savvy, and often new to motorcycling entirely. They don't care about vintage leather or nostalgia. They care about performance, range, connectivity, and design. Harley has already figured out how to market to them. Indian hasn't even figured out how to build for them. And if Harley succeeds in building that bridge between tradition and technology, Indian won't be able to follow. Because without a plan, there's no path. But maybe the most damning part isn't Indian's lack of a Livewire competitor. It's their lack of vision. Because riders don't care if your spec sheet is perfect. They care if you see them. And all of this leads to a truth Indian can't dodge anymore. It's not just that Harley is winning, it's that Indian never truly got in the fight. The final verdict. Here's the brutal truth. Indian isn't failing because they build bad bikes. They're failing because they never became a real brand. And now, in a market that demands more than just horsepower, that absence is fatal. Polaris tried to revive Indian with all the right moves. New engines, sharp marketing, a clean slate. But a clean slate doesn't build culture. It doesn't create belonging. It doesn't inspire riders to tattoo the logo on their skin or pass the bike down to their kids. Harley-Davidson has that. Indian doesn't. And that gap is widening. Even now, Indian leans on the myth of heritage. The claim of being older than Harley. The illusion of a legacy that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It's clever marketing, but it's not the truth. And riders can feel the difference. They don't just want a bike, they want a brand that's been through the fire. that has a past, a present, and a future. Indian's past is broken, its present is uncertain, and its future? If nothing changes, it won't be around long enough to matter. Indian was a revival, not a resurrection. It was a project born in a boardroom, not a garage. It never earned the stripes, it never got the scars. And that's why it's slipping again. Not because the bikes are bad, but because the soul never showed up. And without a soul, motorcycles are just machines. And riders don't ride machines. They ride meaning. Harley's still in the fight. Indian? You tell me. Comment below and hit subscribe to follow where this story goes next.